Honorable Grace KIPTUI is a former woman rep for Baringo County and one of the very good listeners to the show, has been calling and contributing to all the conversations that we've had. We're celebrating 3 years, Mheshimiwa Grace.
Yes.
Karibu.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Our birthday is also a birthday to you. Okay, so happy birthday to us.
Thank you so much.
Mheshimiwa,
Yeah.
you are a former woman rep for Baringo. When did you
I
serve?
am the first woman rep. When you say former, when I'll be 100 years, there will be a train of formers.
Yes.
So I better maintain my lead.
The pioneer woman rep for Baringo
the
County.
First, yes,
right?
The first.
Well. Served 5 years after being elected by the people of Baringo County.
Yeah.
At a moment when this seat had just been introduced via the constitution. And now it was you versus other women candidates going across the county and campaigning for the seat.
Yes.
So very many things, of course, you were facing for the first time. Was it your first time getting into politics then?
Yes. But not the first time playing politics.
Okay. Getting into politics and playing politics.
Participating first time. But being involved, I've been for a very long time.
What have you been doing? What's the involvement?
Majorly campaigning for people whom I thought would help the community. Doing a lot of civic education in the media. And of course, as an advocate of the High Court, occasionally I help leaders. Either invest their money or, help them generally with ideas and issues.
This is the power of grassroots mobilization. Yeah. So you'd used it before. You are identifying candidates, aligning yourself with candidates, campaigning for them, and mobilizing voters for them getting elected or them not getting elected. And now it was your turn. Was it different this time when now it's you who's going to say, don't vote for, it's not about so and so, it's about me?
Actually, what happened is that I've been doing civic education for like a period of 8 years. So that voice was known. The face was not known. But the minute I said I wanted to run, everybody said, why not? So you've been with us all this time and they could almost know what was in my mind and what I stand for.
When you say your voice was known, what does that mean?
Yeah?
When you say your voice was known and not the face?
Of course, I had not moved to each and every part of the county or Rift Valley for that matter. So people know me, but some may not have seen my face. But they didn't mind. So long as it was me, welcome.
Meaning it was a voice that people associated with civic education. Many people had heard your voice. They knew the name. And then when you decided now to jump into the waters of politics, they now knew who this voice was.
Besides being in the airwaves, I was also a constant figure in the county. And of course, with my practice, I interacted with so many middle-class people from my community, for instance. So it was not hard. Even them, they put in a word for me. That she's an integral person, I think she'll do a good job, and it wasn't difficult.
What made you take an interest in politics?
As I was busy doing the civic education, especially around 2007, when we had a lot of the campaign of 2007 was like no other. And for instance, in my county, Moi had just retired. People had come in 2007 whom I really did a lot to make them get the seat. So teaching them those issues about leadership, what is the role of the voter, what's the role of the leaders, what. I delved into the understanding. And even during the constitutional making process, I used to really do a lot of teaching on that. So when the it was decided now that these new seats are coming up, I felt like I needed to go and lay the foundation, especially for the women leadership. The second thing, my mission was to go and help people economically get empowered. That was the major thing. Because I really hated seeing people in poverty. I didn't like it. From my background, how I grew up and all that, I really wanted to push poverty as far as possible.
And so you wanted to be part of the change.
Yes.
In
and
the community.
I knew it is possible. Having come from there, down in Gario Valley, I would look back and say, I find like my classmates are in where I left them. And I felt like I really needed to pull. Let them also see that life can be better.
Sure. It's interesting that you talk about these two things, understanding the importance of voting for people in the community, and then also talking about economic empowerment, and then being as far away from poverty as possible. In the mobilization or the education of, voters in the community, were you able to make the link? Could they see that many things concerning economic activity and empowerment then are hinged directly on the person whom you vote? Were they able to make that connection?
Mostly around 2007. You remember in Kalenjin land, it was the first time we ever had so many women in parliament. There were 7 in number. And I would want to say that it came as a result of me trying to make them understand that it is not fair to discriminate women and not to send them to parliament. For example, South Rift, before 2007, they had never elected a woman to parliament. And the mission was, when you take women to parliament, they will get confused, they get lost. In Nairobi, they see many bright lights and they will just lose it up. Yeah. So I was able to convince them that when you get your children, you take them to school, boys, girls, up to the end. Even when they work, you appreciate the ladies. When they step forward to get into a political seat, you raise the bar. Oh, a married woman cannot do this. Oh, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they got it. And I used to tell them, make sure you send the women. If you think they will get lost, send the women who are learned. And that's how you saw people like Sally Koske, Professor Kamar, Professor Sambili, all those. Yeah. They got it. So I'm a firm believer that when people are given the right information, they make the right choices.
They do. And understanding the responsibility, because I think this is it, that you get into an election period like what we have just come out of now, are currently still in, and then people will, exercise that vote at the election and then forget about it for the next 4.5 years or the next 5 years. But then we've been told that it is a process through which you must continuously engage. Do we have people plugging into that, or is it just, I'm going to vote during an election and that is it? In terms of going beyond and holding your leaders accountable, things like this?
Unfortunately, from where I sit, I don't think that conversation continues after the election. And the voter's mind is kind of corrupted during electioneering period, where instead of looking at what somebody can do, there comes this charmer man, the big man syndrome. Then he starts telling them to pick a suitie, irrespective of whether somebody knows what they are going to do or they have the passion to go and serve the community and all that. And then everybody sings suitie. And immediately after the elections, then they start asking, who is this we elected? We didn't know this person. Oh, we were just told in the suitie. And the voter keeps on suffering year in, year out because they don't get their rightful share. Because generally politicians are self-centered kind of, especially some, majority, but not all.
Mashima, let me ask you this question. What do you think it is, from what you say, that drives people into believing that what a politician, preferably a senior politician, tells them is what they must do? Where you are told, vote 6 piece, and you vote 6 piece. That question you're asking, surely. I mean, we see people asking questions and we see people going against the suit, but it's in a minority cases. From where you come from, what do you think it is that gets people in this position where they feel they should just follow what it is that they're told?
I think there are several factors. Number one is ignorance. I feel there is a very big vacuum when it comes to educating the masses. Whose responsibility is it in this country to make sure that even laws that are passed in parliament, these people get to understand? Whose role is it?
Who's been given that role by laws?
Well, the media, I find them trying, and I don't know. I have not seen a concerted effort.
As someone who's been a member of parliament, okay, by virtue of the county position you held, would you think that perhaps it is the duty of people like yourself who are elected into parliament to actually explain, because you are there by virtue of people electing you
To represent
them? Yes. So is it also not part of your duty to represent them and getting them to understand the things that they sent you to do for them?
It may be, yes, you try, but there isn't a well-documented or a well-set area that says the leader has a day or some formula or a way to talk to these people.
There's no framework, huh?
Because first thing, once you are elected, the voter, I had said that one thing is ignorance. I think the other one is fear. People are made to fear that if you don't get to follow this route, something terrible will happen. You will not get Mandeleo. I don't know, something. Some fear, a lot of fear. And so people coalesce around our person. You know, it becomes tribal, politics being local and all that. So that thing is exploited to the extent that these voters, they don't choose the person whom they know will surely serve them. And then the issue of poverty also, as I was saying, this handout issue is very destructive. Because the minute you get into the power, you're made to become an ATM without a pin. You are supposed to take care of everything and everybody.
This is the expectation of the voter.
That is the expectation.
That we have elected you.
Yes.
You've gone to Nairobi.
You are earning $1 million.
You've gone to Nairobi. You're earning $1 million. Bring the money.
Yes.
Okay. So, but in the expectation that in every lawmaking, as a representative of the people, you're going to engage with them and tell them, so there's this piece of legislation that's coming, or there's a policy that's being rolled out by government, or this is the direction, the general direction that the government is taking, and this is where we can take advantage. Is that not civic education?
It is, but apparently by the time you assemble people, you better be ready with some money.
You have to
And the more you continue engaging them, trying to make them understand, they are scratching their head and saying, this lady is taking so much time.
Too much English.
Utupatie tuendange. You see? So they may not even be in a frame of mind to absorb what you are saying.
So is it the same thing then, if you cannot engage them at that point when you're representing them? They elected you, you're representing them, you're coming to give them feedback and progress reports, and this is what is happening in Nairobi, and this is what I'm doing to represent you. And they're saying, let's take it to you to 20.
You are talking too much. They even said, there was a time they were saying, we need to increase listening allowance because you are keeping us here for much longer. You know, increase the listening allowance because you needed to have sorted us out. We go.
So whatever the message was not landing home. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, it is very difficult when there is no election for people to listen to anything.
Right. So then how do you, from what you see, how do you then cross over from where, you know, crowds of people are coming to listen to something, not necessarily to hear what it is that's going to be said, but because they know that there's going to be something that will then be put into their hand later on. And here we are saying that we need to have a more governance, or, you know, a more civic approach to population. How then do you, because we're looking moving forward and saying, how do you deal with that? We've had politicians, who've come here and told us very clearly that you have no business talking to a crowd. If you don't have money in your pocket, they're not going to listen to you. And neither are you assured that whatever it is you've said to them, they will really take it home later. And they will deem you unserious if you're not handing out this money on a regular basis. So where did it start? Did the politicians start handing out, or did the population start demanding it?
This is something I want even you guys to help me crack today. Where did we go wrong as a country to an extent that leaders are supposed to be ATMs instead of doing what is in the law, that their role in the law?
If you ask me, the genesis
Yes.
is with the politician.
Of yesteryears.
Yes, it is with the politician, because in my own backyard, I remember in the days when, even before, when there was this push towards multipartyism, and having a public rally required you to get a permit from a chief, which was almost next to impossible. So many leaders of the time in my neck of the woods would choose funerals to deliver their messages, because at a funeral you can talk. And the term at that particular point was taxpayer. That's the term they used. And they were saying, when these KANU MPs come to you with money, it is your money. You pay taxes, so take it.
Yes.
Don't shun it. Take it. Now, this, what you've just asked, the question you've asked, gets to the heart of now what I refer to as the eventual consequences of something that people begin without realizing how it's going to morph and become a complete monster. Now, this is what happened. The voter prior to that didn't look for handouts.
Yes.
If
When the chief called for a meeting,
people went. If an MP came to visit, in fact, most members of parliament were considered religious people because the church communities embraced them. They were members of the community. They are people who everyone related to. But the moment the money element came in, then if you didn't have money, and you see, it just grew. And the amounts that were being demanded grew. And the amounts that were being spent grew. So, here we are. It's now entrenched and it's normal. So, we stopped talking of hundreds of thousands, we start talking of millions. Nowadays, we talk of billions.
and soon we'll be in trillion.
Yes.
So it was entrenched by that, by
It's politicians.
and also it's a move from, you see, like you're saying, in the KANU days, if there was going to be a meeting, the chief would mobilize the people. So it wasn't that it's not a negotiation. Funga duka iko mkutano.
And everyone knew it was, or whether it was on a Tuesday. Chiefs' meetings were known, the days were known, the times were known. So
And the
people
day
went to the
Mheshimiwa
meeting.
is coming, the MP, funga duka, Mheshimiwa is coming. So it's sort of like, top to bottom, and it's an order. You must attend this meeting.
Yes.
And then now starting to, because of trying to fight, this guy is able to mobilize a meeting using the chief, and you're trying to fight him as an opposition person, and you've already been branded. You know you'll never get a permit to hold a meeting, so you go to the rally, and in order to demonize the person, you say, kula pesa yake.
Yes.
You know, I'm a daughter of a chief, of a chief of Kenyatta's age, kind of. And I saw people bring gifts to my father.
Yes.
They were not demanding.
No.
When he calls for a meeting, people would come and they didn't even have phones or anything. They used to use a horn, There was a high place in the community where you would go blow the horn, and people know there will be a meeting tomorrow. And they come. And some bring even gifts to give it to him. It was not about, you have called us, so I want fare back, I want lunch, I want ABCD.
They would
But
attend.
somewhere along the line, as City is saying, we messed it up.
No, the politician introduced it. I mean, the politician himself has morphed into somebody who actually started off to help people. Because in those days, there wasn't much in terms of salaries.
No.
No. So really, if you take it further to the representative of the people at the local level, what we call councillors, those time it was voluntary. You could have a job that you do, but you volunteered and you are a councillor. Essentially, these were people who wanted to see the communities change and benefit.
And leave alone that,
Yes.
it was never about you stepping forward and saying, I want a seat. People would even approach
you and say, come and take up
you,
this position.
or if you are a young man, your father.
Yes.
They tell him, let us have this young man. And not even to lead. They were saying,
To come and serve.
ng'ombe, kitu kama hiyo, akwe shepherd.
Yes.
We want him to be a shepherd.
Angalia maslahi yetu.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they would look, before they approach, they would check the family line. Are these people who are good people? Are they integral? Are they hardworking? Are they what? Then they just approach but now,
Commercialized.
some guy comes from nowhere. You don't even know whether they have ever seen leadership.
Or if there's madness in their family kind of thing.
And when he steps into the shopping center, people start looking at the diameter of the car, the tires of the car. Look, I mean, what has that got to do with how you perform? If you come with a Prado, and another guy comes with a V8, and another one comes with, I don't know what. You know, they will follow the one with a huge car.
The bigger the car,
The bigger the tire.
the bigger the tire,
The bigger the car.
the bigger the following.
So you can see already the what do you call the values system.
It's actually called conditioning. Because over time, people have been conditioned to more or less quantify. It's like that car gives them a value proposition that they can look at. They say, oh, kama hii ni mguu kubwa, because where I come from, people also say, unapeleka mguu kubwa, okay? So you've been quantified. They figure, to drive this, this equals, okay? If you come with a Pro Box, you will come with a Pro Box. And you may find yourself alone with your Pro Box. So,
And your relatives.
yes. And even your relatives may just support you, but doesn't mean they'll vote for you.
Yeah.
Let's
So
take a break.
You see now that issue
Yes.
is where the voter could help themselves, but they have been corrupted in the mind, I think. And so they become
the worst, best
Their
enemies.
own worst, best enemy.
Yes.
Best worst enemy.
Yes.
28 minutes to 8. Let's take this break and come back. We talk about, okay, so what is this about we as voters? What drives us? What motivates us to select a leader? Is it about the money? Is it about the wealth of the person? Is it about the questions of their integrity? We have very many MPs elect who have court cases. Okay, are we considering that? Is that a factor, or does it not matter at all? Mheshimiwa Grace KIPTUI, the first woman rep of Baringo County and a very good listener of the show and a contributor, is here with us in the studio to talk about this. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Robinson Talam says, big up Wakili. We felt your leadership as Baringo people. Continue doing the good work. Well appreciated. So, Siti, are we our best worst enemy? Really? I mean, when it comes to all these things, how we treat a leader. Because when a leader comes and all we're looking at is the size of the tire of their car, what we're looking at is how much money they're giving us, not even wanting to sit down and listen to what the message they have is. Unatupatia nini, my friend, twende kazi yetu.
No, we're talking about a culmination of a process in my mind. We're talking about how it is, and a trusting people believe in a process, whatever that process was, and believe in the way the individuals in that process ought to conduct themselves. And then over time, because of that trust, the word condition which I brought into the discussion, you see a change coming into play, and that change involves money in one way or the other. So that the values that we associate with the politicians also change. See, politicians by and large, could almost be described as selfless in a sense, because yes, it was a job, but it wasn't one of these jobs where you were going to get wealthy. No. It was a job where you were going to change. Now, one could argue that at independence, the needs of the Kenyan people were different from what they are now. And I'm saying not really. The needs haven't actually changed that much. But when you then have people who get into politics, they don't start off or with a track record of having been involved in or participating in the community's affairs like Mheshimiwa here. No. They start off as businessmen, or they start off as bureaucrats who have made money in whatever they are doing, and then they go into business and they're going into parliament. So essentially they are business people. So when they get into parliament, the business mindset is what we then see. The relationship then that the MP has with their people is transactional. It is no longer service. They talk service, but that's not what you see. Now, that particular situation simply just morphs into a far uglier form of what one saw earlier on, where you find the individual who is supposed to be the citizen who is being represented even stops being a human being. You've been profiled into a commodity that is used and tossed here and there and pushed wherever it is that would suit this particular individual. And I dare say that's actually where we are right now. Because if a politician was talking about people and believed that these are people whom they're representing, they would conduct themselves rather differently, if you ask me. But they don't.
Mheshimiwa, I mean, even just based on what CT is saying, and if you look at times when it wasn't even called civic engagement or it wasn't called that. We did have, and correct me if I'm wrong, where, I mean, just like you're saying, members of the community coming together to do things that they ought to have done. Members of community coming out and selecting a leader and saying, look, this is what we need, and we are matching our need to an individual that we see would be able to carry that responsibility. Do we see a distinct difference between that which happened in those times and that which is happening today? How can we get the voter? How can we get the electorate? How can we get people back into that place or back into that way of thinking that it is a corporate effort? That it cannot be the leader who comes, gets your vote, gives you some notes here and there, and then goes into the annals of the National Assembly, for example, and then does whatever they want.
Thank you, Oko. I think for me, it should be a national conversation. The city is saying we're in a very bad place. And our value system, you know, Kenyans will say they are going south when they actually are going north. Yeah?
They will knowingly say they're going south to deceive you.
Yes.
Or they'll be saying they're going south without knowing that they're actually heading north.
They may even know, because like laws in parliament where we pass them, yeah? There are so many laws, almost covering each and everything.
Yes.
And you will find people raising motions, you know, one law on top of another. Implementation, zero. And we talk of values which we wish we would adopt, but we don't. I will go to the community campaign on a platform of what should be actually my role, but I don't actually mean it. The minute I'm now elected, I'll go for my biashara. And I use, whenever I see somebody who is raising their head, I go and cool them down with something. You know, that kind of thing to maintain myself.
Yeah.
It has become so competitive. It has become something which has no moral compass. It is all about competition and self-actualization and accumulation of material things. So
what you're saying, Mheshimiwa, essentially is that even in this last election, that it would be hard-pressed to find one, two people who are really concerned about economic empowerment of their people, developmental upliftment of their area and community, who want to make sure that people go from one place to the next, who want to make sure that infrastructure, the people who are genuine about leadership and governance are few and far between.
They are very few, and they are getting discouraged by the day. Because I'll give you a story. There was a gentleman who became an MP in some part of Kenya. He brought all the CDF that was ever required to come to the community. He would network with other, either intergovernmental or even corporate Kenya, to make sure that these people's lives were uplifted. He did so much. To a point, the community decided to go and visit him to tell him exactly what they were feeling, that they're appreciating what he's doing. They carried honey, carried wimbi, carried a cow, carried a lamb, whatever. And the fellow was convinced that surely we are in sync with my community. When the elections came around, the party big weeks now, they go and correct that relationship, that very nice and productive relationship, by using words like, he's not one of us, he's not with me, or something like
he's
that.
Fighting me.
Yeah, something like that.
Party
He needs
boss.
to go to wherever he came from, something like that. And you know the voters,
They actually turned.
they turned against him, and he was voted out.
So what is it? Is it that the voter is so gullible? Or is it that the voter has no focus? Because if this is one person at your local level that you have such a good interaction with, you know them. You know they mean well. It doesn't matter where they come from. You've been dealing with them. You've been engaging with them. You know they mean well. And then this regional kingpin comes and tells you, this is my enemy. And that's enough to sway you. What does that say? What is that saying about the people?
It just says we are in a very bad place, because this voter should have
A mind of their own.
or even be selfish for themselves and say, okay, he may not be your friend, but according to us,
He's
we've
our
seen
friend.
all our taxes come back, we've seen the school, we've seen the health centers, and all and all and all. And stand up to this guy
Kingpin.
who comes 3 months to the election. You've never seen him before, and he may never come back. And here, you dismiss somebody who meant well, somebody who was a servant leader. You know, there is a difference of leadership, politics, servant leadership. You know, we cannot generalize that everybody who is in parliament is a servant leader.
Yeah.
And we are not interested
City
in
has
those.
just said people are businessmen, people are what. So this voter must be so careful and selfish to listen to these big wigs and make their own choices. To
So
show them that.
why is the voter not selfish?
That's why I came here.
Is there lack of because this is the thing, isn't it? That is there lack of is there a lack of understanding? Is there a lack of knowledge? Because or knowing that the two situations are connected. That the things that you're after, that you're taking that money on that daily basis to go and sort out whatever need. That if you had somebody in that position who was doing the right thing, chances of you needing that handout then would have been reduced significantly. If you had proper systems in place, if you had proper networks in place, which come about by proper legislation and proper engagement in terms of your job as a leader or in that position, those things would be there anyway. I mean, look at countries whereby, for example, the taxes that City is talking, the taxpayer issue you're talking about, we pay taxes, so they give us that money. If you look at countries where those things are taken care of, you're taxed, but those things are taken care of. When people are having conversations about elections, they're not talking about, oh, I went to the doctor and I couldn't find medicine in the clinic. That is not the issue. They're not talking about that I drove my car from point A to point B. No, forget about car. They're not talking about that I was at the farm and the road was dilapidated so I could not get my produce to market. They're far from those issues. They're talking about issues on another level because those issues have already been taken care of by this person. So now you're able to graduate to the next point because the very basic has been taken care of by a system that has gotten
works,
it.
a system
The
that
system
works.
is working. In this case, the system is not working. So here we are talking about you want to get what you will eat on that day. So I will hear whatever Honorable Grace tells me today because I'm getting the 200. And then I'm just going to go tomorrow and it's just a vicious cycle. We're doing the same thing. So is there a disconnect between, look here, folks, if you actually put somebody in place that would be able to get the job done right, this vicious cycle that we're talking about would not be. We would not even be having this conversation right now.
You see, even the the so-called, you are saying people who are straight, yeah? They are getting shy, getting discouraged, like with the person in the story.
Yep.
Where is he right now?
What do you think he's feeling?
Yeah.
I mean, I have come in, I have tried to show you this is how we can move forward as a
And
community.
you've not given me
This is what leadership is supposed to be.
And someone comes
Yes.
and in 3 months' time,
Yeah. Undoes everything.
all that is undone.
And then immediately, these voter will start complaining. Better so and so.
Yeah.
We saw this, we saw this. This other one, we don't know where.
Quisha.
We don't even know where he lives. He doesn't come.
I think I see
He
a
has
disconnect.
people who are surrounded himself with, he can't be reached.
There's a major
I
breakdown.
see the disconnect, not actually with the individual. It's that the voter is not seeing the system. The voter is seeing the person.
Exactly.
So if we were voting in to say we want to put in somebody who goes in there and becomes part of a system that then works for us, and it doesn't matter, it's you, we know what the system should be doing, and so we know what we are asking you to go and do. Not that we are sending you to go and find out how that system works,
create
and then
a
you go and
system.
create a system and bring goodies to us.
I mean, consider this perspective. If you look at the way, for instance, the presidential races are run in this country, they are packaged as a community property.
Yes.
So it is not the individual, it is the community. And the presidency that is being sought is the community's presidency. So when the candidate speaks, it's not about his candidature. It is about the collective candidature. So when that is brought to bear on a hapless member of parliament in a small constituency, and there's this larger concept of our presidency. It's not the individual's presidency, it's our.
And when we're talking our, we're not necessarily talking about ethnic grouping here.
Oh no, ethnic
Yeah.
grouping is very, very close to it, and
Yeah.
those who are associated with it. You see, the power of ethnicity comes into play because we have embraced as Kenyans a representative perspective of leadership, meaning we understand an MP represents a region, but we also understand that there is the prestige and the emotional element that is attached to a presidency. So when somebody is president, yes, president of the country, we understand, but we also know exactly where they come from.
Yes.
Exactly. And we also know exactly what community they are from. And we also know that that community is therefore represented. Not just them, but those who are associated with it. It's a powerful representation. You asked the question. In my view, that's the point where we think with our emotions and not with our minds.
You are right.
Because when the emotions are over and the reality checks in, now your mind starts functioning. You wonder, what the hell did we do? But it's done.
And you start flaming a wave.
Yes, but it's
it was a
done.
wave.
But it's done.
So I think from what Oko was saying, there's a very big disconnect of understanding that we are in a country where the majority of the people are down here. They donate part of their rights and responsibility to a small group called leaders who must then receive our taxes and bring it back and help do what we need, you know. If they understood that, then they would be holding these people to account and they would be selfish. You see, before elections or before the campaigns start, you don't hear a conversation where people are saying, what type of a leader do we want? Number one, he must be a kind of mature. Number two, he should not, you know, he's somebody who is hardworking, a machichunga.
Yeah.
Number three, like that. Nothing like that happens. They just wait. And then some guys come, wamevaa uniform flani, they are dancing on the stage, music, you know, that kind of thing. With choppers, and people are mesmerized. And that is it.
Have you considered, Mheshimiwa, something that I've been playing with in my mind? How it is, this is my theory. It's a bit conspiratorial, but it's my theory nonetheless. That a lot of it also has to do with the levels of poverty that our people have. Because when you deal with people who are poor, whose basic demands are really very basic, they will not allow themselves to go beyond thinking of what they need on an everyday basis. So somebody who seems to promise that to meet the needs of the day, whereas in reality, the person whose message or narrative ought to hold so is the person who's telling you how to change. Because change it starts immediately, but you see the results later on. It's like education. You never see the benefit of it at the time you're in nursery school. But you will see the benefit as time goes on. Forget the issue of getting a job, just what you become as a result of getting an education. Now, if you remove people's mind from actually getting to understand that, because they're in this constant state of always seeking basics, then you've got them exactly where you want them.
But now, how will they ever get out of that vicious cycle unless they stop going around in the musical chairs? How will they ever get out of it?
They've got to make that decision themselves.
Okay, if they are to make the decision themselves, it would mean they should be empowered knowledge-wise.
Yes.
And persuaded.
But
by not necessarily the politicians, maybe civil society, maybe churches, those other people.
Non-state actors.
It should be something like multi-pronged approach to pamper this thing into their mind so that at the end of the day, they will know when you get a leader who is a servant, he will make the road, water. And I sometimes wonder, from 1963 to date, we've never sorted out those issues. Year in, year out, every election year is about water,
So
road.
then shouldn't it be clear? Because we're saying that somebody is in a desperate state. And if somebody comes and makes a promise to you in your desperate state, you're likely to believe what they're saying at that moment. But you've seen since 1963 that you've not been able to sort out this thing. And every 5 years, somebody comes and says, I promise to do this. And for 60 years, it's not been done. Hadn't that lights come on to say, hold on a minute, could these guys be hoodwinking us? Generations have died and gone, and the promises are still the same being made. What gives for you to be able to say, hold on, maybe these guys are not being honest?
Poverty, there's a concept of the psychology of poverty and how it is that when people are poor, the state of mind that they have leads to certain consequences. And the vicious cycle you speak of is then repeated because people are poor. Now, the crafters of the 2010 Constitution, I think, among many things, realized, let's try and see how we can actually ensure that things aren't centralized, that they are taken right to the levels where people are. The thing that we hadn't perhaps considered is just how damaged the people who seek high office in this country had become. So that in your own backyard, with your own people, the resources that are intended to change their lives, you simply choose to take it, you and your cronies and the people close to you. You see no harm, nothing wrong in just taking it and taking literally all of it, and the people remain in the same position. So,
when we were discussing this new constitution, I used to worry so much about the devolving of corruption. They say it's the same forest, different monkeys.
Yes.
So even if you take it all the way to the church,
Yes.
it is not. There is no guarantee that it will work.
No, there is no guarantee.
And I think the problem here is our value system. I always believe if Kenya decided that they wanted to say and do what they say, we may be in a better place. But so long as we still say we are going north and we are going south,
we don't mean it.
Yeah.
All of us are looking for that one opportunity.
How will it ever come?
All of us. And then we point fingers at somebody else. Even in this room, when you're discussing the voter, we forget that 3 of us voted just the other day.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We voted. And all the things that we are discussing still come to bear. Because at what level did you engage with all the 6 people that you voted for?
Sure.
At what level?
My friend,
Or even know their names.
I probably knew 2.
Right.
The other 4, no.
And then at what level are we going to engage with the 6 people who will be in office for the next 5 years? But we look back and say, in the village, the people who come, everybody just distances themselves. That person in the village is distancing themselves and saying, wale watu wa Nairobi ndio walikuja akatuambia, huyo ndio mtu.
Ndu has a proposition here. Ndu keeps saying that there's a threshold of suffering that when people reach, their eyes then open widely and they realize, no, enough.
And I don't think it's reached there yet.
But now, 60 years down the line.
It's not. Yeah, I don't think it's reached there yet. To be honest,
the story you tell of this individual, I know of a story of a similar individual who, against party lines that are dominant, has continued to be a member of parliament because the people have decided they don't care.
This is our person.
Yeah. Yes, we don't care where this person comes from, but this is the person who has our interests at heart, and they keep voting that person in. Yes.
So what we are saying actually is the voter has the power.
Yes, the voter does have the power.
Why they don't exercise it? Maybe because of ignorance,
yes.
because of poverty, But I wish they should be a continuous education.
Yep. And that is what we want to be doing here.
I don't know whose duty it will be.
Everybody.
But I don't want it to be a one-person thing because it will be associated with what person. Let it be.
Everybody is.
Your being here is doing it. This discussion is doing it.
Yes.
So it's a question of continuing it.
Honorable Grace KIPTUI, thank you very much for joining us today. Asante sana.
Thank you so much.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.